Welcome, guys. Welcome back to my channel. This is your caregiver supporter, Queen C. Pinkston, and we're going to continue on our series right now on uh, empowering Black families in their fight against dementia. I dealt with two things in my personal caregiving life, and it was caring for my late mom who suffered from, old age and suffered from old age. She lived to be long, but she had dementia in her latter years, and from my late husband who was on kidney failure. So those are two main topics that I really dig into. Maybe not just always dialysis, always dementia. But when we find information, we want to bring it. And as you can see, I have a video up. We're going to listen to some more of that video of those researchers and what they're talking about as far as Black families in the fight against dementia. But before they do that, I want to say thank you to each and every one, but keep coming back, for liking, for sharing, for subscribing. I do not take it for granted. I want to just say I really, really appreciate you, because you don't have to do this, but you do, and I thank you for it. This is a important topic. It touches the Black community more than we ever thought. You heard on the previous video from yesterday where the panel was saying they thought for a long time, and we all probably did for a long time, that dementia and Alzheimer's was strictly, a white person's disease. It was the palm people. But no, we are highly affected by it. And I know my family is, from times past, my mom's cousins and various ones over the years. And then my late mom, I say her last couple of years there was with dementia. So it's something we need to be aware of. And with times changing and things happening as far as being able to support them, be there for them, try to understand them, and to give them the best proper care that's needed, we got to be aware. The reality of dementia caregiving for Black families is shaped by unique challenges and cultural strengths. Black caregivers often face systemic barriers, such as limited access to resources, education, and healthcare services. These disparities are compounded by higher risks of dementia among Black Americans compared to other groups. However, Black caregivers also draw on strong community ties and cultural resilience, that cultural bounce back. Tailored programs like these very people here that you see on my left, that you're going to hear from in just a second, they are actually founders of Caregiving While Black. Caregiving While Black. Okay? It's a tailored program, and it aims to address these challenges by providing culturally specific education and support. They are researchers, and they've spent time researching this information. Personal stories like Brandon's journey, caring for his mother with Alzheimer's, highlight the importance of family and community and navigating caregiving responsibilities. I want to look just a minute at, I think we can find, is it Caregiving While Black here? It's abbreviated CWB. It's called the new version, Caregiving While Black. Yeah. And it says it aims to empower caregivers by addressing the complex realities of caregiving in the context of cultural beliefs and social experiences. The course topics include home life management, caregiver self-care. We got that's huge, okay? And navigating the healthcare system, being able to meander your way around through the healthcare system, because there's a lot of things out there that would be available to us that we are not aware of and we'll miss out on if we don't know what questions to ask. We don't know what resources are there available for us. We'll just miss out. We'll be trying to tackle it all by ourselves. The tailoring process of the Caregivers While Black was informed by feedback that we garnered directly from caregivers. So they searched out a bunch of caregivers to come up with this information. It says we conducted focus group sessions with 16 Black caregivers whose insights shaped the content of the CWB, Caregivers While Black, and deepened our understanding of why culturally specific education is essential. They had to find out you couldn't just do a general box and throw everybody in it. No, no. It has to be culturally specific education. It says their responses answered a frequently asked question: why is a course tailored to Black caregivers necessary? Ah, why is a course tailored to Black caregivers necessary? Again, why can't it just be everybody in the same box? Well, before I go further with some of the reasons they gave, my mind just went to Native Americans. Native Americans. When I was in Miami, I'm from born in South Georgia, raised in Florida, so attended school in Miami, Dade County, and back. And there's some Indian reservations, American Indian reservations I got to visit, and I got to see that their culture and their lifestyle was totally different. When I went to Zimbabwe, and I got to go into the villages of some of the different communities there, I saw some of their lifestyles and ways of living was different. So what maybe we do here and try to make it work is not culturally sufficient for them. It's not culturally sufficient for the Native Americans, the Native Indians. It's not culturally efficient. See, so it has to be culturally efficient. It's not that we're saying, well, the Blacks got to have something. No, no, no. It needs to be culturally sufficient for the Black community and for your loved one that you're caring for. So the question again is, why is a course tailored to Black caregivers necessary? He said from these discussions, three main themes emerged. One, limited access to information and education and resources. That's one of the reasons we need to have it. Number two, a need for alignment with Black caregivers and cultural identity because you understand the culture. You understand your mom, you understand your aunt, you understand the Black community that you're in. Number three, a need to instill a sense of empowerment and feel seen. A need to instill a sense of empowerment and feel seen. These themes reflect the caregivers' narratives and highlighted the ongoing struggle of navigating disparities in healthcare and related services. Caregivers consistently viewed their experiences through the lens of race and health inequities, a perspective shaped by the reality of systemic discrimination and its impact on health outcomes for Black Americans. You know, we're going to go to the video. You know, I keep saying I want to bring it, I always forget to bring it up. The book Medical Apartheid. You know, I just had some stuff done today. I went and had my throat checked, and so I know now what needs to be done to help me clear up there. And as you know, my history I've shared with you guys that I was getting some dental surgeries done, these type of things. But I had to make sure I let them know, wow, that hurts. Wow, I feel the pain. Whoa, you know, that no, 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 wait, that hurts. You can't do that. Let me do it. There's something here. Something is hurting because historically speaking, we have been categorized or stereotyped as not being able to feel pain. We don't feel pain, so just do something. No, I do feel pain, and it does hurt. And either we do it a different way or we get some kind of pain medication. We do something here. You can't just come with those. So that could be the same way with if you're throwing everybody in a box with dementia, or everybody in a box with Alzheimer's. The culture is different. Your grandmama, or dad, or mom, they remember what they remember from their younger years or their younger days or their lifestyles, or this type of a thing is totally different. In that memory is still there. So we have to be able to work with that or work with them in a different manner. It's not everybody is in a box. So it says here, they often compared their experiences to those of non-Hispanic white African Americans, emphasizing significant differences in daily life and caregiving outcomes. So there is a difference. Let's go now and hear what else they have to say on this video. To me, I thought it was very interesting, and let's see if we can hear what they have to say.
Caregiving in African communities, and ask the two of you who've done research in this area, what is unique and what is about caregiving for persons living with dementia in African American communities?
So I'll start, Karen, if you're okay with that. So I get this question a lot, right? And sometimes I get frustrated because a lot of people like, well, what's the difference? A caregiver is a caregiver. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. I don't understand why they need to have certain programs that are tailored for a particular race, ethnicity, or culture. And one of the things is we have to realize a color of someone's skin makes a difference. It makes a difference just outside of caregiving, how we live everyday life. And we know that a lot of things have been happening over years, but now these recent years, things have been highlighted that happens to many people, brown and Black people. So imagine these things are occurring in addition to caregiving. So caregiving overall is already challenging. But now, as a Black caregiver, I am faced with, when I'm going to the store to buy groceries for the person I'm caring for, I'm faced with, am I going to return home? How do I get to the store safely, return back as well? So that's just one example. Even when we're engaging with the healthcare system, there's a lot of literature that talks about the discrimination that is often Black families face. And it is true. Many people say, oh, well, we experienced that too, but it's something different. It is something different when you know and you watch others go up to the same doctor's office and they ask for something, they get it, and you follow, and you don't get it, or you get ignored. And those are the things that Black family caregivers that I've been working with go through. And that's why I developed Caregiving While Black. Because it was one Black caregiver came to me after I spoke at a church, and she said, Dr. Epps, all that education, everything you gave me was good. Thank you for it. But it didn't resonate with me. And I was like, what you mean? She was like, that's not what I need. I need to know how to find a grocery store, like in my neighborhood, because we don't have these things. I need to know how to, not to go to a fine dining restaurant. I just need to know how to eat at the table. Just things like that. I can't go to the police station and say, here's my dad's record. I would never do that. And so these are things I actually heard from caregivers. I've seen them shut down in support groups. We want everyone to attend a support group, but they're in a support group with other races and ethnicities, and everybody's showing their experiences, and I'm witnessing them shut down. And when I follow up, they say, this wasn't a place for me because I'm not concerned about how I'm not going to go to France next year. I'm concerned about how can I get my dad diagnosed or get this proper care. And so those are the things that really led me to develop Caregiving While Black, where it really speaks to the unique experiences of being Black in America and a caregiver. I pass it to you now, Karen.
Well said, Fayron. And, I think about when you mentioned this notion about support groups and thinking about the needs of these Black caregivers, I don't think there's too much more that I can add about your explanation of what the needs are. But when we think about something that I heard from my participants as well in our studies about this notion of support groups are great, however, I can't get to a support group. Who do I leave my loved one with? How do I engage in being a part of something where I have to be at a place at a certain time? And so from those sorts of feedback from individuals who participated in our studies, we were able to co-create Peer to Care, which is a peer support program, an intervention that pairs current and former caregivers with our former caregivers serving as mentors and our current caregivers serving as mentees in a way that they can bring together their experiences as Black and African American caregivers, and the mentee learn from the mentor.
Mm-hmm. I want to just stick with this a little bit further and ask about each of your own research into this area just a little bit. I really enjoyed reading, and we'll have links to this in our show notes. Going back to you, Fayron, about some themes you found about Black caregivers of people living with dementia. I think around the complexity of the family structure and who is involved. I wonder if you might say a little bit about that for our listeners.
Yeah. Okay, let me see if I remember that paper, right, Alex?
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just joking. So I think it's not just that paper. Several papers that we look at that caregiving may not be in the traditional way. And it may not be that one person, and it may not be that person that's providing that support and care may not be a blood relative.
Yeah. Right.
And so we have to recognize that when we work with not just Black families, but other families from diverse racial and ethnic groups, that their social network, their care network may look different. And so that's one thing. And then as we look back at the complexity, as we look back at that, again, it also looks at the environment that these families are in, and how that influences their ability to care.
Yeah.
I think, Karen, you were a co-author on that paper with me, right?
Yeah, and actually, for those who don't know, this paper was cited in one of the Alzheimer's Association Facts and Figures report.
Oh, nice.
Fayron, I don't even know if you were aware, but I stumbled across that really important piece that actually came out of a GSA symposium that Fayron and I and colleagues were a part of a few years ago.
Go ahead. We're going to fight me and Alex right now over the next question.
Well, let me just ask one more, sticking with this, Karen. You said something about your research in this area this morning pertaining to views on term end of life or end of life care. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that.
Sure. So this was actually with my very first study where I asked the question of these Black and African American dementia family caregivers about meaning and understanding around end of life. And one of the questions was, when you hear the term end of life, what does that mean to you? And kind of universally, people said, death, dying. And I thought, well, maybe I need to ask this in a different way. So my follow-up question, the probe to that was, well, when you hear the term end of life, do you think about before death, after death, or both? And I will tell you that even in instances where people said both, the next thing that they talked about was the after-death experience, whether or not funeral plans, burial, services, that sort of stuff were taken care of. So the disconnect there potentially with healthcare providers is, when we talk about end of life and end of life planning, we're thinking about the before death stuff, right? So whether or not somebody wants to be on CPR or ventilator, that sort of thing. But the priority for these individuals, a lot of focus, and I totally get it, is on those services and prepare, the celebration of life afterwards. And even in my own culture, we see that as being extremely important, and we should, as healthcare providers, never negate that. But if we have this disconnect, we have to be able to recognize that this is important for patients and families, although what we're trying to get at in the moment is that before death piece, because we know that something has to happen before we get to a funeral, right? And what that looks like, to some degree, by having a conversation, by documenting wishes, we can potentially influence what that looks like and what that experience is for that person who is dying, and then also for family members who are left behind.
So potentially really splitting out the before death and the after death components when we're talking about what's important to people who are facing serious illness.
Yeah, so just being clear on where people actually are in their understanding and not making assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fayron, we're going to go back to you now. And major theme running through your work is the location of your work in faith communities and churches in particular. And I wonder if you could say something for our listeners about why that location.
Why the church?
Yep.
Why the church? Why the church, Fayron? And so first I want to just say that I am a woman of faith and I was raised in the church. And as I started doing my research, religiosity was so important to me and I wanted to study it. I did it for my dissertation, but after my dissertation, people said, nobody's ever going to focus on that. Nobody's worried about spirituality. The church, they didn't want to hear anything. And I just kept
wrong.
were they, right? And but it kept coming up in my research. As long as I was doing research with Black families, every interview, something came up about that person's faith, them attending church, their spirituality. And so I just had to take a chance and I say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to explore this. And you know, literature shows that, especially in the Black community, the church is a cornerstone. It's also has been a haven for many years for African Americans, for Black families. This is the place where they can come. They were safe. They can have meetings. And sometimes it wasn't always about worshiping. It was after what happened after the worship experience, those meetings that took place, where they actually started movements, right? And so that's what's so important. And I feel like, well, why not go back there and make sure that our faith communities are equipped to support these families? If we're saying that Black families or Black individuals are disproportionately impacted by dementia, why not prepare the cornerstone for this? So they know how to better support their parishioners, and we can start talking about reducing the risk of dementia as well, and do brain health activities. So that is my reason for it. And Alex, and it started with I said, I just want to work with 6 churches. Let me see how this works. And 3.5 years later, I'm at 63 churches, 14 states. And so it really just shows, and I'm very excited because it shows that many of our faith leaders, people didn't think they were concerned about health and really getting on board and seeing what they can do, particularly with dementia. But they just need to know the statistics. They need to know the truth. They need to know what's happening to their parishioners, their congregation, the community. And once they realize that, they want to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. And is that, so this might, just sticking with you, Fayron, for a moment here, how do you get the in? Is that how you get the in? You go to the reverend or the head of the church, and what do you say to them?
I get the in all kind of ways, Alex. All kind of ways. So first of all, I would say it started off by me knowing somebody that knew a pastor, right? The neighbor was a pastor. And I'd be like, you think they'll give us their church? You think they'll open up the church for us? And so we started there. And then, of course, I went to my own pastor. And then once we started doing it and people came, then it was the community saying, I need you to meet my pastor. Yeah. And then once I meet, every church we go to, we have to meet the senior pastor or a senior faith leader. And I share the statistics. I am straight up. I give them the statistics, the alarming statistics, and they are so shocked. And that's at every conversation I share. These are the statistics. This is what's going to happen by 2030, 2050. This is what they're projecting.
Projecting in terms of like what?
How dementia, one of the key statistics I say is by 2030, nearly 40% of individuals that will be diagnosed with dementia will be Black or Latino. That hits home. Yeah. Because that's less than 10 years away. And now they want to know, well, wait, what is this? And when I start describing what dementia is, then they start reflecting and saying, of thinking about their family member, their mom who may have died and they might not have cared for her or gave her the right support because they didn't know, or the uncle that they may have locked up in the room. And these are our faith leaders that are sharing these stories with me.
And Farron, at the start of this, when we talked about why you went into this, you also said that there's this, misperception that dementia was a disease for white people. Is
Yes.
that what you're also hearing when you're talking with these faith communities?
Yeah, so I'm the only one saying it, but when I say it, they just nod their head. Some people be scared to say that, but I mean, it's the truth. This is how many of us, many people in my family and my community, that's what we were told, because not that it didn't exist, we didn't know what it was, and that's what it was. So when I say that, they're like, yeah, we thought that too.
Mm-hmm. And sticking with you while we're on this thread, before we turn to Karen to hear about the peer intervention, what do you do in the churches? Like, what are you doing in all these churches now? What's the intervention? What is this caregiving while Black?
Yeah, you said equip them. What's the equipment that you give them?
Yeah. So no, this is Caregiving While Black is a psychoeducation program online course, but the church, the work with the churches, is called Alter. And this is it's a partnership that we do with our faith communities for 2 years. And we have them select 16 initiatives that they're going to work on implementing over this 2-year period. And we provide them a framework, come up with a timeline, a roadmap, if we want to say that. And we coach them and guide them in implementing these activities. So many times we go out, and I'll tell this to everybody, education is great, but we cannot stop at education. But that's what has been happening. We stop at education, and then we leave many of our leaders and those in the community like, what do we do with this education?
Yeah.
Where my Alter program shows them how to apply the education and create supportive services that can help their parishioners. And we also address worship, which is a touchy topic, because I'm asking them to change and modify how they deliver worship experiences, worship services.
To accommodate the needs of persons with...
Can you give me an example of that?
With dementia?
Yeah, so an example would be shorten the time length. One, I start with that.
I did 12 years of Catholic school. I think I would agree with that too.
Yeah, right. We got to follow that model. But, before the pandemic, we would go to churches and we were sitting in there for 3 hours. There's no way our families, not just those living with dementia, but caregivers can actually do that. And so shorten the length, or they can do something online for 6 to 10 minutes, have visual aids available, words to the hymns up. They can also have a high proportion of music, familiar prayers. So these are things that we already probably know in the literature, and I've just gathered it and put it in one spot to help guide our faith leaders when they do their worship. We also want to make sure we have ushers that have been trained to be in worship service, so they can support these families as well. So if there is a disruption, quote unquote, that they will be there to support them. So
And
those are examples.
And what are some of the other elements outside of the worship setting?
So like under support service.
Yeah.
Yeah, so under support services, advanced care planning will come. Support services, we do memory cafes, respite programs. Advanced care planning will come more under the education. And so they can tailor different education things that they will need to provide within their church to support these families. And this is where advanced care planning comes in, where we introduce them to persons like Dr. Moss and others that are offering advanced care planning, so then they can learn about it and be able to help and support their parishioners.
And are you working with all different types of denominations, faith backgrounds, or is it a particular faith community that you work with?
Great question. So we're open to working with where Black people worship.
Yeah.
So if it's a place of worship for them, we are there. But so far over these 3.5 years, it's predominantly have been Christian denominations.
Yeah.
And if our listeners want to find out more about Alter, should they go to the article you sent us, or is there some website for this?
Yeah, it's alterdementia.com, and that's alter with an E.
Great.
So I'm not going to the altar.
Yeah, I like it.
I also wonder, I mean, it kind of brings up the question about, is there a tension between creating something that applies even in this, like a faith community, Black individuals, tailoring it specifically for a particular community or even a group of individuals, let's say LGBTQ population within a particular faith community, versus creating something that applies to a larger group, but still somewhat tailored to the, let's say, the Black religious community. Is that a tension that you feel, or is there one?
You say tension?
Yeah, like this idea of, like, I mean, in one hand, you know, historically, like we created caregiver programs thinking, oh, it should apply to everybody. When in truth, what I'm learning is no, it doesn't, for all of these great reasons. But you can also create something that applies just to that one person that's sitting in front of you really, really well, but it may not, you know, apply to a larger group than that individual. Is that something that you see in your research and the work that you do, or am I just making that up?
No. I think so. Even within our framework, we have to tailor it for each denomination.
Yeah.
So our framework is pretty general. It's our choice and our community advisory board choice to just focus on the African American community. But within the community, each denomination, each faith community we go to, we have to tailor it because they come with their own different culture.
Yeah.
And we are open to also working with other groups. And we've had some conversations already of how they can take some of this and apply it as well and see what resonates with them. So the things that we have in our Alter program, it has been through our community advisory board. It has been through the families that we work with to say that, hey, this resonates with them.
Yeah.
And so that's important. If we go to another community, another group, we want to make sure some of the recommended activities would resonate with them.
Yeah. Karen, I want to turn to you now and ask about
Yes, take the pressure off of me.
One of the major threads that runs through your work, and it's just brilliant, I love this, is the idea of working with former caregivers of persons with dementia and training them to be mentors to current caregivers of people with dementia. I wonder if you could say more about like how you came to this idea and why you think this works.
Yeah, so with my very first study, one of the things I found after meeting people in the community, you know, people knew about the work that I was doing. Once I had IRB approval, circled back to them, loved one passed away. And I thought, shoot, you know, I should have been able to use them for my research. It was a dissertation, you know, needed to get out and done. And I thought in my next study, I'm going to be able to capture their perspectives. I'm going to make room for these former caregivers because they have this wealth of experience that I need to be able to capture. And so when I got to my faculty position at Ohio State, I was able to execute this then dream study where we had these 4 groups, our current and former caregivers who all self-identified as being lower socioeconomic status, healthcare providers and community leaders, and learned so much from them all around the needs of African American and Black people living with dementia and their caregivers around advanced care planning, barriers, facilitators wanted their ideas on, you know, if we design an intervention, what should this look like? Now, these data were all collected during the pandemic, and we learned from our former caregivers is that they want to give back.
Wow. Guys, hang in there. We're going to see, can we come back with our second part? If we can, hopefully.
They want to continue to be engaged in research. Problem, though, is that the majority of caregiving research that's out there are for people who are currently caregiving. So, you know, we have a tendency, I think, to hang our caregivers out to dry once they are no longer considered, quote unquote, caregivers. And so I wanted to be able to include them. And because of what they shared, their needs are, and how they were able to tell their own stories, I thought, well, why not continue to include them? So Peer to Care does just that, includes our former caregivers as those mentors to mentor people who are currently caregiving. This is what they told us they want to do, and so this is what we're allowing them to do with this intervention, and I'm extremely thrilled about
That's
it.
great. So it came from your research, from the people, from themselves, from the caregivers, this idea of generativity,
Yes.
wanting to give back.
Yes.
And so a little bit more about why this works. Like, what do they have to share? What does it do for not just for the caregivers who are current caregivers, but also for those former caregivers?
Yeah. So we have yet to see, because the study is still ongoing, what it will truly do for our mentees, those who are currently caregiving. And, in the future, we hope to be able to capture the perspectives of our former caregivers as well, because we know that there will be benefits. There's a high chance that there will be benefits for our mentors as well as former caregivers. And, just want to be able to capture that as well. So look forward to future studies and hopefully more individuals, as we're starting to see now, be able to include the perspectives of these very, very important group of individuals that we really need to tap into.
Mm-hmm. And sticking with this for a moment here, remember, Karen, we were fortunate to have Karen Moss here the entire day, and she started off the day giving a work in progress presentation to our group, who interrupted, because that's what we do in work in progress. I told her, no one's ever made it through giving all of their slides in our work in progress, so you're no different. But one of the things that you talked about was being with this caregiver and doing like an interview. It was like over 2 hours, and she was just bawling and talking with you. And I wonder if you could just sort of recreate that for our listeners.
Yeah, so this was, of course, pre-pandemic, and, having conversations. One of the things I kind of pride myself on prior to the pandemic is that I would never have these, challenging conversations with folks over Zoom or, over the phone. Pandemic's changed all of that. But what I do miss about an aspect of this is sitting around the kitchen table with individuals, these caregivers, and them sharing their stories. And so when we think about at the time, it was folks who are currently caregiving, and the way they shared so openly about the challenges, the struggles that they experience as African American and Black dementia family caregivers in the midst of tears. I mean, sometimes audibly bawling on the recorders and asking me not to stop the recording. No, I do want to continue. I want this story to be shared. No one asked me about these things. No, this is good. This is therapeutic. And so being able to hear their stories, be able to capture what their needs are, and hear that heart to heart, hear the struggle, and be able to provide a program, not that Dr. Moss by herself came up with, but hearing from them what their needs are and being able to offer it back to them and hopefully be able to make an impact in their lives.
I think it was Carol Levine who wrote a New England Journal perspective as a caregiver, saying, nobody's listening. Isn't anybody listening, right? And I love that here you are listening to these former caregivers, these bereaved caregivers tell their stories and giving them an opportunity to give back and contribute.
Yeah. I'll just say one thing quick, Fayron. I think one of the similar threads between the work that I do, the work Fayron and others do as well, is that we do get to listen. We get to listen to the stories of people that they share with us. And when we act on it, we get to see the outcome of it. It's one thing to hear people share their stories and kind of just let it sit and do nothing with it, but be able to offer help through our research. That is what drives the work that we do. That is where, we see the outcomes and where we want to continue to push this agenda forward to be able to provide the support that is needed, so much needed in this community.
Sharon?
And I was wanting to ask Karen a question, and I want to see, because I had this in my research, pre-pandemic, were a lot of your interviews held at the kitchen table?
Yes, so they were all in person.
But at the kitchen table? That's on what?
Well, let me think about that. Kitchen table, living room.
So it's something symbolic. I think through my work, most of my research interviews were held at the kitchen table. And I think there's something symbolic about the history of the Black family, that kitchen table.
Yeah.
This is where meetings happen, at that kitchen table.
Yeah.
This is where discussions are occur, people make decisions at that kitchen table. So when you brought that up, I want to just kind of highlight that, because in my work and with my team, we talk about that kitchen table.
Yeah, yeah. And, I'll say too that I ate grilled cheese sandwiches, had coffee with strangers. My mother always taught me, don't eat from strangers. I'm like, I'm eating, and this is good. And, these individuals oftentimes did not want the conversation to end. 2 hours in, they don't, one even, I remember distinctly saying to me, don't turn off the recorder. No, no, no.
Yeah.
And it was just wonderful to be able to hear. Felt really honored to be able to listen to their stories.
One question I have for both of you, I'm going to start with Karen. Like, you both are nurse leaders who are doing this, unique work out there. Does the nursing background give you a particular frame of reference or help you in a way that other disciplines may not see?
Absolutely, I would say 100% nursing has my career as a nurse in the ICU and in a few other places has helped to shape this question. I think about the days in ICU when I saw families struggling, patients suffering towards really poor outcomes for the person in the bed, for what the family members were going through. And I thought about, oh my gosh, we need to do something about this. This is where the question and the fascination around death and dying started. And then fast forward, thinking about my research, how am I going to address this? I felt like the ICU was too late.
Yeah.
I needed to reach these people before that. And so hence I went to the community and have never looked back.
Because it's interesting, in the ICU, you become a non-family member caregiver. And in the hospital, and sometimes even at home, that brings that unique perspective to nursing.
Yeah.
And Farron, how about for you? Does it give you a different perspective?
Yeah, well, I think my perspective will be similar, but I'm just going to add to it. And of course, I'm just going to lay this out here that we are nurses, so we're pro-nursing, just for the listeners to know that. But I think that at nursing, we look at things holistically, and so we just don't focus just on that patient. We're looking at the patient, the family, also the environment of this family and for that patient. And so all of that is in our treatment, our plan of care, to help this person get better. And I think when we look at other disciplines and my peers, they may come in, they may just look at one specific thing. What is wrong, just right here. Or like for a social worker, what are we going to discharge them through to? But we're looking at it all. And those skills that I had from the clinical setting has actually transferred over to my research. And I think it has helped me to be able to look at that family unit, look at the contextual environment, and how does that play on the well-being of the individual living with dementia, on the caregiver, on others as part of the family. And so, yay for nursing. I just think nurses, we bring so much to the table, and all research teams should have a nurse on their team.
And we are also going to, because Karen, you actually wrote a brilliant article that I read last night about the role of nursing and gerontological nursing. Any additional thoughts about the role of nursing in dementia care, in research or
disparities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so particularly as we think about the way the older adult population is growing in this country, the need for gerontological nurses is great. The need for our older adults who are living into even older ages is massive, and we have to be able to meet and respond to those needs. And so the needs around serious illness care, multiple chronic conditions, for example, dementia, of course, being top of mind for me because of the work that I do, and nurses, like Farron said, being at the forefront of helping and supporting, being champions of reducing health disparities that exist in this space is the only way to go. How do we not focus our efforts on better care for all people? Let's leave no one behind as we continue to move forward with this and help our caregivers be able to be better caregivers and emerge from their caregiving role and be able to go on and continue to live better lives and not continue to hang them out to dry as they continue to to emerge into older adulthood themselves if they haven't already.
Okay, I got one last question for both of you. If you had a magic wand, you could change one thing around this issue, what would it be? Farah.
Oh, no, not me first.
I was going to say Farron, you can go second. Karen.
So I would say to be able to get all of our caregivers and persons living with dementia engaged in advanced care planning, thinking, having conversations, documenting wishes beforehand, and hopefully improving end-of-life outcomes on the backside of things, not just for the person living with dementia in this space, but also for the caregivers and impacting in a positive way how they plan for their own end of life.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so mine, I don't know if it's going to come out so beautiful, but mine would be is that all caregivers from every race, ethnic background, also geographic region, rural, urban, suburban, would have access to supportive services and have access to resources readily. It would be at their fingertips, and they won't be looking for it and hunting for something that will be able to support them.
Well said. And mine, because I want to give one too. Mine is I would like more tambourine in everybody's life.
You got it.
And with that,
You got it.
Guys, wow. What a show. I tell you, I could listen to it over and over. I just enjoyed, I learned so much. I have a quote here from as she was talking about the caregivers who are Black. It says, what I went through with my mother, she never really got a proper diagnosis. This is what a caregiver was sharing because they were believing that other Americans was getting better financial capacity to pay out of pocket for resources such as respite care, timely access to critical decision-making information, and sufficient community service resources to ease the challenges of caregiving. Most importantly, caregivers valued a course tailored to their needs. This course and what they are doing here on Caregivers While Black and Care to Care and eldercaredementia.com was geared to help Black families. And I'm telling you guys, you understand now why it's necessary. It needs to be culturally based. Another point was limited access to information, education, and resources. It said caregivers felt that their race and ethnicity contributed to limited access to education and resources compared to non-Black families. Many caregivers noted that even when resources were available, they were often provided too late. So one caregiver said, I personally feel that we get the brunt end of things, reflecting the hardships that contribute to the stress of caregiving. Another caregiver shared what I went through with my mother, and she said she never really got a proper diagnosis, and illustrating their dissatisfaction with the healthcare system. So day-to-day barriers also include difficulties assessing timely information. One caregiver noted, because somebody knows this information and is utilizing it, and it hasn't gotten to me. And I'm in year 7 looking for this information. Another caregiver highlighted financial constraints when she said, we can't even send our parents to respite. So where do we get funds for it? Does anybody care? One caregiver internalized these challenges, attributing their struggles to a lack of education. Says, quote, we are not educated enough to receive the other things that are out there. This sense of inadequacy only intensifies the caregiving burden. Regarding educational delivery, a caregiver emphasized the need for innovative approaches. Being a minority, we have to continue to educate in a different way. Oh my God. Another caregiver added that generalized information is often insufficient considering the disparities that Black Americans endure, and suggested generalized information will not necessarily be as a beneficial for us. So much of this, guys, I need you to please like this video, share this video, Dementia is no joke. Like I said, my mom had it. It's the thing that deals with my family, and I'm not afraid of getting dementia. We just need to have education about dementia, and we need to know how to deal with it because it is not just a white person disease. It is very prominent in the Black community. A need to align with caregivers and cultural identity. Caregivers express that the Black culture and lived experiences are unique, pushing back against the assumption of a uniform caregiving experience. One caregiver noted, they try to put us in their box. We are not in the same box. The added stress of living in a society that often fails to acknowledge their identity was a recurring theme. As one participant shared, living in a country that doesn't always acknowledge who we are, historical mistrust, and underrepresentation in research further influence caregivers' perspectives. They express feeling overlooked, which reinforce bonds within the Black caregiving community. Despite facing disparities, caregivers wanting to feel empowered and effectively supported in their roles. We need to better understand some of the things that we'll go through, some of the disparities that we have simply because of our race. And said one caregiver, participants advocated for a course that made them feel seen and validated, with one suggesting information specifically for us could affirm their experiences. Seeing familiar faces with another source of, was another source of comfort. It gives us the comfort of somebody who might understand a little bit better. Caregivers highlighted the importance of shared experiences in fostering community and belonging. Culturally tailored interventions were viewed as crucial for enhancing decision making and providing day to day guidance. So, in summary, as the researchers whom you just heard, developing the Caregiving While Black course, they recognize that caregiving shares universal experiences. Yet, the voices of Black caregivers reveal the significant role that race and culture play in shaping their journeys. Tailoring this educational program allowed them to create culturally relevant content that addresses the unique challenges caregivers face due to race and class-based disparities. Black caregivers emphasize that culturally tailored courses provide better understanding, improve navigation skills, and offer trusted resources. For many, these courses validated their experiences and promoted empowerment. I love that word, potentially restoring trust and strengthening confidence in caregiving in caregiving their roles. So I really want to take this moment to acknowledge. So I want to thank Dr. Farron there and the other doctor here for coming in today on this video and sharing this information with us. I wanna just really thank the participants that participated in this study because if they had not, the caregivers had not agreed to participate in the study, she wouldn't have really had a lot of this information that she's able to share with us right now. So, I mean that makes a big difference right there. So, I really want to thank you for just hanging in there. Some of you came and some of you stayed, and I pray that you leave a comment about this information. Guys, if you're interested in getting more education, getting more information about mainly these two diseases, two main topics for me is going to be dialysis and going to be dementia. And why is that? Because that's what I dealt with. I dealt with dialysis and I dealt with dementia. And so that's where I spent 20 years in caregiving with. I didn't know all of these things. I kind of roughed it out and found it out the hard way. And so now that I've been through that, my goal is to help others not have to meander around and try to find out information and try to find it out for themselves. But I want to try to be a resource to help you get information that can help you, and then you can help somebody else. I really love the part where they shared about the churches, the black churches, and how Dr. Farron said she started out with 6 churches as she was doing her thesis, 6 churches. And as she began to educate, and now she said she was up to 63. And this video has been out for a minute, so God only knows, she might be up to 100 churches by now. But it is so critical because Black people, this is one of the things that we do. Our churches, as she said, has always been the gathering place and the place for us in the community. That's where it is at the church. And that's where we eat, and that's where we talk, and that's where we fellowship. That's where we come to have, discussions and meetings, and a lot of our Black history teachings were done there. And all of the things is based at the church. So what is even more so, is that we know that we have all ages in the church, and we know that we have a lot of elderly in the church. And are we meeting the needs of our elderly family members in the church? And are we meeting the needs of the caregivers that are caring for them? Because when I came along, everybody was excited. They loved me and they loved my mom, but nobody knew about how to handle the dementia that she was dealing with. I had to make sure that I had to be the one to try to man everything that was going on with her, because nobody else fully understood it. It was that, oh, okay, well, mother has this or mother has that. Or we had one mother one time that visited the church body. I'll never forget it. And no one in their body knew that she was suffering from dementia in any way. And she looked normal, because you can't tell it all the time, but it's not something you see. The people look normal. And so we hadn't seen her in a while. She came in, she sat down, and they brought her to church. She was sitting and enjoying church. And she got up, and folks didn't pay any attention. The ushers didn't pay any attention because they assumed she was going to the bathroom. And so she got up and she walked right out of the building. Well, she all of a sudden, we're wondering, well, where is she? We've been looking for her. She doesn't take it that, let's check the bathroom. You check the bathroom, she wasn't in the bathroom. So we're looking all around the sanctuary, and everywhere that could be, she wasn't there. So she had made her way out and onto the street. By God's grace, we were able to, her family was able to find her, and she was not harmed in any way. But it kind of upset us because we needed to know that information. If we had known that she was suffering from this condition, then the ushers or whomever in the fellowship would have been able to set guard with her and to be there to protect her. So I'm telling you, it's critical that we know these things, and we must realize it is not just somebody else's condition. It affects the Black community, and we must be there for each other. So guys, I'm telling you, if you have any stories, this is a safe place. I have written right on the screen, this is a safe place. Nobody's going to bat you. Nobody's going to condemn you. We are here to be a blessing to each other. If you're liking these videos, if you need this information, if you need more information, like someone sent me a question the other day, and I got right on it to try to give as much information as I could, and I'll still be even looking up for more information for them. So text it, email me, put it into the YouTube chat. I check it every day. I get a notice when it's there. Or we have people that are on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. A couple other websites that we're on. So just, put it there. Eventually I'll get it really quick on YouTube, because I get a notice right away that someone has left me a message. I get an email stating that the message is there. And so I can respond immediately. but just do that, please. And let's be a community for each other. Let's be here to pray and encourage and build up each other. We need each other right now. We need each other. We cannot be that divide thing again, okay, I'm over here and you're over there, and you do your thing and I do my thing. That's not the Black community. That's never been us. We've always been a village. It takes a village. It takes it with our youth. It takes it with our elderly. It takes it with each and every one of us. So guys, listen, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for your prayers and your support. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to see you right here in our next video.